The house manager, Mrs. Ellison, gave the tour with a clipboard and a cold smile. Silver pantry, service corridor, laundry chute. Speak only when spoken to. Mr. Crane likes the lights at 40% after 9. Ava repeated the rules. Practiced hands, folding linen, like she hadn't once picked out these very napkins from a Paris showroom as Julian's wife. In the staff locker room, she opened her tote. The tools were simple and legal: a key fob cam, a tiny button mic, a fiber-thin snake lens. She had learned to be careful these last 2 years. Careful with promises, careful with banks, careful with hope. Every gadget recorded locally. Nothing left the house over Wi-Fi. She wasn't going to give anyone the chance to wipe her clean again. Her reflection in the metal cabinet looked like someone else. Hair tucked, eyes older. She clipped the mic inside her apron strap and walked back into the life she used to own. Now as a shadow in comfortable shoes, Julian swept through the foyer in a midnight suit. Phone to his ear, a joke on his mouth for board members who fed on confidence. For a second, he looked exactly like the man who had danced with her barefoot in this same hallway the week they moved in. The memory cut and cauterized at once. Ava kept moving. She planted the first camera behind an antique frame in the study where he held late calls, its lens aimed at the leather chair he favored. The second went into the dining room's crown molding, angled to catch whispers at dinner. The third, the smallest, she placed inside a white peony in the sunroom, Julian's private refuge with the people he trusted most. Victor Hale, his CFO, and Lila Park, the PR chief who had lubricated the divorce in headlines. When midnight thinned the party into murmurs, Ava slipped into the service corridor and opened her handheld monitor. 3 gray squares woke into grainy life. She took a breath. "Talk," she whispered to empty air. "Tell me what you did." The first week offered small, ugly truths. Julian's security never checked the silver pantry. The house staff signed NDAs longer than novels. Victor and Lila arrived without being logged. One afternoon, Ava wiped the study desk while Julian argued on speaker with outside counsel. The prenup clause did exactly what it was designed to do, a lawyer purred. "She'll never appeal without new evidence, new evidence." The phrase sat like iron. That night, the peony mic in the sunroom caught laughter and ice clinking. Lila said, "Public loves a clean narrative. The artsy wife spends too much angle tested well." Victor added, "Board hated her influence on the foundation spend. We just accelerated the inevitable." Ava's grip on the monitor whitened. The divorce headline that painted her as reckless hadn't just happened, it had been engineered. She remembered the morning her credit lines froze, a photo of her at a gallery blasted with a dishonest caption. "Wife buys sculpture while company lays off staff." The sculpture had been a loan. The layoffs were scheduled by Victor months before. Truth had been arranged like furniture. She kept working. In the laundry, she found a blazer pocket with a folded receipt, private security, a consulting fee, dates that matched the day their bank account mysteriously flagged her transfers. She photographed it, slid it back, and realized her hands were steady. Grief had stopped shaking. Flashbacks came like migraines. The mediator tapping her pen, Julian refusing to meet her eyes. The day the judge called her self-interested and awarded him the house, the foundation, and the story. Even then, she hadn't hated him. She had hated the fog that had settled over the truth, the way powerful men could invent a weather system and call it climate. 2 nights later, the dining room cam finally caught what she needed. Victor, drunk on expensive Cabernet, bragged. The staged photos with the artist, genius. Innocent hand on shoulder, wrong angle, right caption, boom. Jury of public opinion rendered. Lila smirked. And the anonymous tip to the finance blog? Chef's kiss. Ava didn't cry. She marked timestamps. She made a list, names, accounts, doors that still needed opening. There was one room the house manager never mentioned on the tour because she didn't know it existed. Ava did. She designed the renovation. Behind a built-in bookshelf in the study, a narrow seam split the paneling. When the house was new, Ava had called it the storm closet, a pocket space for emergencies. Julian had installed a small server there for personal files and long-term backups, just in case corporate IT ever went dark. At 3 a.m., when rich houses sleep deepest, Ava pressed the hidden latch. The panel swung inward with a weighty sigh. Dust drifted in her phone's flashlight. The server hummed like a low, guilty thought. She knelt and connected a portable drive. The folder tree bloomed: Personal Archive, PR, Divorce. Security, External, Foundation Board. She opened PR first. Emails from Lila with subject lines like Narrative Options and Lean into Fiscal Prudence. Attached pitch decks walked line by line through how to seed stories across friendly outlets, how to suppress photos of Ava's volunteer work and amplify any image that could be trimmed into excess. She moved to Security, External and found invoices from a firm called Gold Shield. One report described a social proximity operation to place a hired actor near Ava at 3 public events. The actor had a clause, no touching. The photos the internet had eaten showed a hand on Ava's shoulder anyway. Someone had added that in post. A video file in Foundation Board caught her breath. A board strategy session, audio only at first, then a slide deck. Victor's voice. We need Julian unencumbered by spousal veto on philanthropic outlays. Her insistence on grants outside our brand is untenable. Another voice. We get him free, we push the expansion through. Lila. We can make the public thank him for it. Ava sat back on her heels. The storm closet felt suddenly named for the right thing. She copied everything. Every file, every whisper. On her way out, she paused at the threshold and looked toward the leather chair through the crack. She remembered Julian asleep there once, a half-finished thank you note to her in his lap after they'd secured a children's hospital wing. People are not lines. They are chords. She had proof of crimes and proof of a man who had let himself be tuned. She closed the door and, for the first time in 2 years, felt less like prey and more like weather. A week later, the house emptied for a board off-site. Only Julian stayed behind, pacing the study, loosening his tie like the past was choking him. Ava brought tea to the threshold, eyes low. Sir? He didn't look up. Leave it. She set the cup down and turned, then paused as his reflection in the window met her face. For a blink he frowned, like a radio catching a station it didn't know it was searching for. Have we met? He asked. No, sir, she said. Her voice had the old softness despite her. He stared at the rain. My ex-wife used to warn me about storms we couldn't see. She was usually right. Ava's mouth went dry. He picked up the cup, sipped, winced at its heat and said, not to her exactly, I didn't know how much of me was me anymore. She left. In the corridor she had to stop and breathe. His sentence was a paper cut that bled more than it should. She told herself pity was a trick. She kept walking. That night, the peony mic caught a conversation between Julian and his mother, Eleanor, who had always disliked Ava's stubborn independence. Eleanor's voice was thin crystal. You let the board decide your marriage. You let Lila decide your story. You let Victor in your pockets. How long until there's nothing left to sell? Julian said very quietly. I thought I was protecting the company. From what? Eleanor asked. From a woman who wanted the foundation to spend on children who can't buy your product? Silence, then barely, from being small. Ava sat with that. People are not lines. They are songs with verses they regret. She didn't forgive, but she adjusted her aim. This wouldn't be a public guillotine. It would be a clean cut through the rot with the truth left standing. She texted a burner number, tomorrow. 8 p.m. study, come alone. Bring courage. She watched. Through the dining room cam, Julian read the message, rub his eyes, and pour the tea she had made into the sink like he needed room for something else. The study at 8 looked like a confession booth. Lamplight, rain feathering the windows, a decanter untouched. Julian came in on the minute, phone left outside, a rare obedience. All right, he said to an empty room. I'm here. Ava stepped from the shadow beside the built-ins and closed the door. She took off the maid's cap. The room seemed to fall a few inches. Julian's hand went to the chair back, like the earth had shifted. Ava? She nodded once. He laughed the way people do when an old ghost speaks in the wrong house. "What is this?" "This," she said, and set the portable drive on the desk, "is the truth you bought and sold." She pressed play on a small speaker. Victor bragging, Lila strategizing, the board shaving her out of their lives with a line item, the Gold Shield invoice, the doctored photo set. Julian didn't sit. He listened like a man at the wrong funeral. His jaw worked, then unclenched, then worked again. When the board tape played the line about philanthropic veto, he closed his eyes. "How long have you—" "Since the night you rehired me as a maid for your new house." His eyes flashed shame. It looked like surprise from far away. "I didn't know. You didn't ask," she said. "You didn't ask anyone anything. You let them build you a story where I was the problem so they could spend what they wanted." He finally sat. "Why didn't you go straight to the press?" "Because I remember the hospital wing," she said. "And I remember the man who used to write donors by hand. I didn't want to kill him to cut out his parasites." He looked at the files again, as if weight could be measured in megabytes. "What do you want, Ava?" "3 things," she said. "You call an emergency board meeting. You fire Victor and Lila in front of the minutes. You sign an affidavit that the divorce narrative was fabricated and that my foundation objections were about integrity, not spending power. Then you endow the foundation we dreamed of with 10% of your personal stake, quietly. No press pass for your soul." Julian stared at the rain. "And you?" "I walk away," she said. "Not back to you, back to myself." He nodded once, twice, like pain had a rhythm. "Tomorrow at 8 a.m., bring the files." "And, Ava, I'm sorry. I don't have a better sentence yet." "Learn one," she said, and left him in the room he had finally heard. The board's conference table was a continent of glass, every face a map of money. Victor arrived cocky, Lila immaculate, and counsel with the sorriest tie in New York. Julian entered last, not in performance armor but in a suit that fit like responsibility. "We'll keep this brief," he said. "We were wrong." The room tensed. He turned the screen to the wall so only the board could see and pressed play. Victor's smirk on tape. Lila's emails, the Gold Shield invoices, the board's own words about unencumbering Julian from spousal veto. Counsel cleared his throat. "We should discuss this." "We are discussing it," Julian said. He faced Victor. "You used my marriage as a lever. You lied to me. You're fired. Effective now." Victor laughed, then saw the security officers at the door and stopped. Julian turned to Lila. "You built a narrative to humiliate the only person in this building who ever told me the truth, without charging hourly. You're done." Lila's mask cracked just at the corner of her mouth. "You asked me to sell a story," she said. "I sold it. And I'm buying it back," Julian said. He signed termination papers that had waited in his drawer since 3 a.m. "Eleanor will take interim communications. Board will appoint independent counsel to review all filings. And one more thing." He slid a notarized affidavit across the table. "This goes to the court that handled my divorce today." A director leaned in. "This will blow up the quarter." Julian nodded. "Then let it blow and let it build back honest. We have a foundation to fund." Outside the room, Ava stood in the hall with Mrs. Ellison, who blinked at her without recognition, then with it. "Your housekeeping," Ava said softly and smiled. Julian stepped out afterward and handed Ava a copy of the signed affidavit and a certified wire confirmation for the endowment. 10%, he said. "Quietly. Keep it quiet," she said. "Let the work make the noise." For the first time in years, they stood without a judge between them. He didn't reach for her. She didn't lean in. It felt like adulthood. The headlines came anyway, not the ones she wrote on her bedroom ceiling in rage, but the version a calmer heart could survive. Crane Corp ousts CFO, PR chief after internal review. Julian Crane announces new endowment for ethical grants. Divorce narrative disputed. Former spouse issues statement. "I wish the company well as it recommits to accountability." Ava didn't give interviews. She opened a small office over a bakery and printed a one-page mission for her reborn foundation. Fund work that doesn't photograph well. Her first grants went to a legal clinic that helps domestic workers read contracts. A clinic that handles appeals no one tweets about. A pediatric oncology unit that needed an ugly piece of equipment donors never put on brochures. Lila vanished from trade magazines. Victor, incandescent with outrage, tried to sue. Discovery shut him up. The board moved forward with directors who could say no without losing their seats. One afternoon, a florist delivered white peonies to Ava's office with no card. The scent filled the room like forgiveness she didn't owe anyone, but had learned to give herself. She placed them on the windowsill and got back to the unglamorous work of changing things one invoice at a time. Julian requested a meeting. She agreed to coffee in a public place with too much daylight for nostalgia. He arrived on time, hands empty for once. No bouquets? She teased, the old humor showing up like a guest who heard music and came inside anyway. "I heard you hate performative gestures," he said. They talked for exactly 40 minutes about governance and grants and the weather. When he stood, he said, "I owe you—" "You paid," she said gently. "Now keep paying the right people." He nodded and left. She watched him go and felt nothing break, nothing cling, only a small click as if a door had closed in the correct frame at last. At home that night, Ava laid the devices that had carried her through the storm on the kitchen table. The key fob cam, the tiny mic, the snake lens. She opened her laptop and copied every recording, every file, every receipt into a single encrypted archive labeled Weather. Then she did something she had promised herself the night she first hid in a staff corridor. She wrote an afterword. "If you're reading this, you discovered a pocket of air under a flood. Use it to breathe, not to drown someone else. Truth is a scalpel. Aim for the rot, not the heart." She backed the file onto a drive and took a slow breath. On her phone, a new email pinged, a grant application from a high school program that taught girls to solder and code. She smiled. The work never ends. Good. Before bed, she returned to the last unclosed tab, a paused video from months ago, the one moment that had complicated her revenge. Julian, alone in the study, had picked up a fountain pen and begun a note he'd never sent. "Ava, if you're ever right again, I hope I can hear it." He had stopped, crumpled the page, poured the tea out, and taken a call that made him nod like a man agreeing to his own erasure. She clicked delete on that clip, not to protect him, to free the space in her head where it lived rent-free. In the morning, she carried the tiny devices to the river and let them go one by one. They sank without ceremony. "Thank you," she told the water. "Job done." Walking home, she passed a bookstore window where a card read, "Truth like light doesn't shout. It reveals." She laughed. "Fine," she said to the glass, to the city, to herself. "We'll do it quietly." The sun came up like a contract she was willing to sign again, one day of honest work at a time. Moral revenge burns quick. Truth burns clean. Ava learned the difference. Power can forge lies, but it chokes on proof. When she aimed her evidence at the rot, not the person, justice made room for dignity. You don't have to win someone back to win yourself back. That's the only victory that lasts.